You both did it at the same time.
Ooh.
You're weird.
Okay.
Welcome back to Can You Not? We actually have several comments today to go through real quick.
Oh, I forgot.
In regards to our previous episode.
Cool.
Yeah, so the first thing that we have is from Mel, who was the guy who submitted the question about quitting college. He said, listen to the whole thing. I think I'm going to quit college and study knots now.
Oh no, we ruined this person's life.
That's totally my fault.
In all honesty, I was surprised about your guys' tips, though. They all had to do with, if it's necessary for the career, don't quit. I'm not actually considering quitting college, but it makes me so unhappy. I was wondering how people made the decision. I am studying to be a German teacher, so yeah, I need the degree to be allowed to teach. And then he mentioned that he'll subscribe to us on YouTube, which we've started uploading videos to. I can't give like a fancy URL for it yet because you need to have 100 subscribers before you can change that. But if you search like C.Y.N. podcast, we have, and guess which episode is the most watched on YouTube so far?
Huh.
It is the Flat Earther one, which already has several dislikes, which I'm guessing
that's so funny.
Flat Earther.
That's
but I thought that was really nice. So thank you, Mel, for the question, for giving us a good topic to go with. I hope all goes well in the future with becoming a German teacher. And then I also have a comment from someone who wished to remain anonymous. They said, I listened to your newest podcast. I really appreciate the topics you chose to speak about. I struggle with the college thing a lot because I have battled with my parents for years about it. If it were up to me, I would not continue college, but my parents are literally forcing me, and I don't have the courage to tell them straight up that I don't want to anymore because they will bitch about it nonstop. I'd much rather have them put the money that they would towards a degree into Indiegogo campaigns. So, yeah.
They're paying for your college? If they're paying for it, do it. if
I was
like,
about to say,
I mean, my parents are paying for some of it. I'm still in the part where they have funding for me, but I have to I'm paying for my own living expenses, and all of my extra money right now that I'm making, like my net income, is all getting saved because the moment their money runs out, I either need to pay for it by myself or take out loans. Man, if they're paying for it for you.
I'm completely on the outside. I would take that in a heartbeat too, I think. But,
yeah, like, dang.
But I can understand, like, it's
stressful. And it also depends a lot on what they're studying.
Right.
Like, if their parents are forcing them to, like, be a doctor, like, oh, man, that would be terrible. But if they got to pick their own major, like, I don't know.
So actually, what I'm reading from this is that we should probably talk about topics maybe that people can connect to more, because it's like these two people seem like they were really interested in what we had to say about like making life decisions and stuff like that.
Oh, we should spend a whole episode complaining about college. We could fill an episode.
We've done a little bit of that before.
Whole episode.
Yeah, but we should. Yeah.
We can each talk about our own major.
So like maybe in the future, maybe I'll think about more like relatable topics to think about. But and we also got a tweet from the podcast Bearded Fruit, and you can check them out on Twitter at @beardedfruit. They said, your podcast was my morning soundtrack. You guys are fun.
Whoa.
So thank you.
Shout out to the boys in Connecticut. Shout outs.
And finally, OG Bobby Johnson asked
God, I'm so upset.
I love that.
Jesse, what did you start?
I've started so many things.
You started this like the day I met you, I swear. Like,
No. I didn't even know you're... Okay, go ahead.
But since our friend Brian was on the podcast, he wanted to ask if that was Brian with a hard I.
He killed it.
That was I, Brian.
Yeah,
Brian.
That's funny because
it is Brian.
We actually do specify the difference between those two friends by calling them I, Brian, and Y, Brian.
Yeah.
So it's funny that he would ask that.
Yeah, I, Brian enjoyed it. I, Brian has told me a couple of times that he had a really good time, and if you want an extra person.
He can be an extra,
Yeah, we'd love to have
him. He can definitely be a fill-in.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. We got some good comments this week, guys.
I'm really proud of my father for keeping track of I, Brian, and Y, Brian. Good job, Dad.
Once again, this summer we need to make that meetup
He wants to have a
happen.
cookout. He literally wants to have a
We
cookout.
could do a
Oh my God.
podcast episode.
Oh
for
my
the
God,
cookout.
that'd be
so
hilarious.
Live from the OG Bobby Johnson den.
We have a pavilion. He has a pavilion. He hangs Tibetan flags and strings of lights
Wow, this
in our
needs to
backyard. And by pavilion, I mean it's like a pop-up tent pavilion, but it's still a pavilion in our backyard. We could sit around the tiki torches and with the smoker, cooking veggie burgers.
I'm too excited at this prospect. I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's a new Ghostbusters movie coming out in July, and people are pretty upset about it. In fact, it has the most dislikes for a non-music related video on YouTube ever. And it's kind of interesting because it's the main cast members are for women. And so there's been this big discussion, are people responding negatively because it's women, either blatantly or non-blatantly, or is it just this like people are tired of remakes sort of thing? In fact, there was an online like movie reviewer kind of person called, his name is James Rolfe, and he kind of pushed this matter even further because he recently made a video where he said, I refuse to review the new Ghostbusters, and his reasons were stuff like, the original Ghostbusters means so much to me, I don't want to like give them any profit. Like his whole idea is that instead of like rebooting it with the name Ghostbusters, if they had somehow worked it into the past ones and kind of like, you know, like passing on the torch kind of thing, so that'd be like Ghostbusters 3.
So like keep it in the chronology instead of just gender swapping it and giving it its own thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So then that kind of begs the question, like, do you think this stuff is happening because people don't really realize how sexist they're being? Because like, I feel a little bit like we see reboots all the time. Why this one? Why is it this one that's getting the most flack?
It's hard to escape this idea that it's sexist, right? Like it's, for us at least.
Yeah.
Like that's the first, that would be the first thing that, at least I would say, would be the main issue here. But looking further into it, I do wonder if people are tired of just rehashes and stuff. But then I keep stepping back to my main point where they don't have the same complaint about when men are the primary oh my god, my head
Like so the main
Jesse's
characters.
the main characters. So I do wonder if this is like a sexist issue.
I feel like part of what makes me think that at least part of this is sexism. And to be fair, I haven't watched the trailer because I don't care about Ghostbusters like at all. But that it's the most disliked thing on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't think people actually cared about Ghostbusters that much. I don't know. I've like never seen like anything about it until this remake, honestly. Like I know what it is, and I probably watched a VHS of it when I was like a kid or something. But that so many people have such huge opinions about it like really makes me feel like it's at least partly like all of a sudden people care about Ghostbusters. Like, what?
Well, I will say that as someone who's like really interested in movies and stuff like that, like I personally have seen a lot of love for it over the years, and I think part of it is because like it's one of those like for people who grew up in the 80s, like that is like one of the 80s movies. Like you can like name only a few, like Back to the Future, like I don't know, Terminator and stuff like that, but Ghostbusters is definitely up there, and I guess it does hit a lot of people's childhood. It does mean a lot, but like Jesse said, like we've seen reboots before. People are obviously sick of reboots, but it's like this one in particular. And I realize they're saying, well, it's because it's like the ultimate '80s movie and it's really meaningful. But like, I mean, and some people grew up with the cartoon, and it's like I don't know. It's
To me, like 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Pretty in Pink. Was it Ferris Bueller?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah,
Back to the Future.
John Hughes movies.
Like I think all of those are top tier in comparison to Ghostbusters. Honestly,
I was never a huge person for Ghostbusters, but I mean, I see why people are into it, but I've never been like obsessed with it. Really.
I guess it's just weird to me that like I feel like some people are choosing this as a rallying point, and like to be fair, there are probably people who dislike it just because it looks like a bad movie.
Interesting thing to think about. What if Steel Magnolia, like the movie or the thing, was all men?
Or God forbid, The Breakfast Club or something like that.
Yeah, like that's interesting. I don't know. Would people have the same reactions to like a gender switch if it was all men instead of women?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that would cause an entirely different uproar. Honestly, I don't remember. I think I was in the movie theater seeing something. It's probably like Batman versus Superman or something stupid. But when I saw the trailer, I got kind of excited. I was like, oh, that's hilarious. So they're doing a gender swap. Like, that's fun because you don't usually see movies just decide to swap the genders of all their main characters. Like, I know that's a thing people do in fanfics and like online and like when they're drawing like characters, they do gender swap. And I think it's an interesting concept. So I was actually like, I don't care about Ghostbusters, but I thought the movie looked kind of cool just because they took it and just flopped it around. And and then all of a sudden everybody had opinions about it, and now I'm just kind of hands off. But
I know when it was first announced and like kind of feeling out people's reactions, there were rumors that they were actually going to reboot with an all-male cast as well, like in addition, and have 2 reboots, which sounds really
and then it's that thing that they did in Powerpuff Girls where there's the Powerpuff Girls and then they're like the boys and then they're like fighting
team together for but apparently
that was awesome, by the way. I'm so happy you brought that up. I forgot about that.
That happened.
I love the
so
Powerpuff
good
Girls. But,
so if they just do that with Ghostbusters.
Yeah, although but they canceled that. Actually, that's actually an interesting segue because they did recently reboot the Powerpuff Girls.
People got mad about that one
people
episode.
People were mad about that one. Like a ton of people were mad about
the unicorn episode.
What?
Well, I think there was an episode where they were trying to like. They tried to make like a character like transgender.
They made like a horse. I think they made a horse who wanted to be a unicorn, and it was supposed to be this kind of like.
Don't they already have the supervillain as a transgender?
Him. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. No, the people who are mad about it though weren't the people who are anti-transgender. It was the people. They said they didn't do a good enough job. Yeah. Showing a metaphorical transition for this horse unicorn.
Those fans go so hard.
Yeah,
though.
The thing was like,
that's crazy.
The character kept on saying like, "Wow, I'm a monster," or something like that. So you're trying to paint trans people as monsters who have to find out who it is. Like, I don't know.
Tumblr's hilarious. Like, Tumblr is so funny. Like, somebody on TV, like, we have Steven Universe, like, fighting this stuff. Like, we have all these things. I mean, him in Powerpuff Girls has been, like, a thing forever.
Yeah, definitely transcends,
forever.
Like, gender boundaries.
Yeah, but then we get mad. I'm not a transgender person.
Interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm on Tumblr. So then, like, the people on Tumblr collectively get, like, mad because it's not good enough. I don't know. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess, like, I realize that, like, especially if you're gonna... I think what people are kind of upset about with this Ghostbusters thing is, like, they don't really know who they're marketing to, I think, is part of the problem. Because fans of the original who grew up with it, which would be a great target audience, are completely not on board with this because they don't feel like they're getting enough fan service or whatever, which I think is a little bit entitled to the fact that so many fans, like, feel, like, entitled, like, you gotta do things my way, like, think about, like, us, think about I mean, yeah, there is part of that, but why do we feel like these movie companies need, and just other mediums, why do we feel like they are so indebted to the fans that they have to try to appease them at all times, I guess?
Yeah, and I don't know, the other thing that I'm thinking of right now is just, I'm just this awareness of fan fiction that I have. Like, I don't read fanfic, but I'm aware that people like taking characters that they know and reimagining them and putting them in different situations and just like working with the characters in different ways. So I actually think maybe like I think I almost feel like that's what they were trying to do, because that's literally they just took the same characters. Like, well, what if they were women? But the problem is I feel like that's not a thing that the 80s generation is down with. Like, the 80s, like, the people who are mad about this are the people who want their characters to stay the same. Like, they don't want to redo this, but I feel like if they like, I mean, it's too soon, obviously, but if they, like, took the first Harry Potter movie and gender swapped the whole thing, I feel like fans would freak out and they'd be on board with it. I feel like it's a generational thing.
Yeah.
And the way that people think about gender is a lot different now than the way that people used to, I think, which matters. But
I feel like we've circled around this topic before.
Gender?
We've talked about fan fiction and kind of revamps of major motion picture things. So we keep on circling around this whole thing. Like, I think modern day art, where like those that consume it seem to be more open-minded with like the possibilities of different kind of artistry. And with that, I think we're okay with having this idea that, like, okay, we have an all-female Ghostbusters troupe. But at the same time, I don't think we're totally in agreement with it being revamped, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So like on one hand,
So it's like people
So
are-
on one hand, I think they're open to the idea, but on the other hand, I think they're not open to the idea.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's
it's
this juxtaposition, this weird juxtaposition. Like I'm not sexist, but I don't like it.
Right.
It's weird. I
And
don't know.
and that's the other thing too, is just I think it should be okay for people to say I don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's not if it's
not
all female and
inherently
you don't,
sexist.
it's not inherently bad that you don't want to see the movie. I don't know.
But I think a large precedence of it is sexism. So, a 3-year-old picked up by gorilla at Cincinnati Zoo escapes without serious injury.
I saw that.
This is according to abcnews.go.com.
That was in Cincinnati, wasn't it?
Yes, Cincinnati, and they have one of the biggest zoos.
I didn't hear about this.
Yes,
I saw that today when I was looking for a topic.
That's
Like
great.
literally.
So I guess what I'm stemming off of this, I'm kind of against zoos because I don't like the idea of entrapping and like caging animals in different terrariums outside of their natural habitat. And I go back to what I like to be in that circumstance. And not long ago, in
That
the
was the thing.
60s,
That was real.
yes, in the 60s, they ended in the 60s in Belgium and in France. They had human exhibitions of black people from the Congo.
Of like all the,
Yes.
it wasn't just the Congo. I know about the one from France.
Yes.
And they had it from all these different like
Cote d'Ivoire, a bunch of other a bunch of other francophone African
they
countries.
won't tear it down because they don't want to forget about it, but they also won't maintain it because they don't want to glorify it. At least the one in France. I remember
Yeah.
reading about that.
So like I put myself, and this sounds really weird, but like I put myself in the placement of a flamingo. I know that's really funny.
Jesse the
Or
flamingo.
a seagull.
Or a
Who has a seagull in the zoo?
or an anteater or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Lion.
a lion.
Tiger.
We're not doing this right now.
Okay, but anyways, I'm totally against the idea of zoos. I'm not gonna lie. As a child, I was brought to the zoos, but as I got older, I realized that I do not want to spend my money somewhere where I feel like, in a weird juxtaposition and like culture shift, I could be there. I know that's a stretch to some people, but to me, it's not. Because it's weird to have these like living beings that are on the brink of extinction, like right in front of us at our will, and we can go there and just like witness them and see them die slowly.
That makes sense.
Isn't that kind of like life, though?
Oh my god, Joe, stop.
I know it's a stretch, but to me it makes sense. I don't know.
I went to, I think the last time I went to zoos, I went to the Columbus Zoo, I think like
And that's a
6
massive
years
zoo.
ago. Yeah, with band, because I was in Columbus with band. We were doing a thing and we went to the zoo. And one of my friends was really upset the whole time because she didn't like the idea of zoos. And I think zoos are interesting because for a while I think they used to be pretty terrible, but now that we are using them as a way to keep animals alive and take care of them, I think they serve a purpose because if that animal would not be well in the wild anyway. And the other thing that doesn't actually apply so much now as it used to is that if you want to conserve something, you need people to care about it. And before we had the internet and before we had all of that stuff, I think the best way to make somebody care about some animal that they'd never heard of, that they would never see, that they would never interact with, the best way to make them care about that animal is to present it to them and say, look at this creature is dying, we need money to protect it, and we need efforts. And I feel like the zoos have helped create interest in biology and in that kind of science, and just an awareness in general. Like, it doesn't apply so much now because we have the internet, but like at a time before all that information was readily available.
I feel like there's an expanded network of preservation societies and refuges, and I feel like those could serve a better purpose because they're in immediate areas of where the animals naturally are, their habitats. So I feel like if we could allocate money towards those, that would be a better option for the animals. I know they are doing that with the giraffes actually, and they're having winning numbers with it, not so much with the rhinoceros. Unfortunately, they're about to be extinct. But I feel like those could serve as a great alternative to these zoo constructs. And the other thing too is I feel like these zoo constructs at one point were statements that we're Western country and that we can have the most
Look at
exotic
this thing we
animals.
have.
Exactly. and we can put them on display. And now it's like, it's not serving a purpose other than for our enjoyment, other than what you were saying. But I feel like there are alternatives that we are neglecting in a sense.
I know my dad once had kind of an interesting point. He said that he's like, in an age where like you can just like watch these animals on your TV, like that kind of takes away some of the, you know, the big, you know, point of zoos, which is to be like up close to these animals. He's like, you know, you can get like a big HD TV, get some documentaries about the pride lands and stuff like that, and watch it from your home and get closer than you ever would in a zoo, and like actually like learn something. Like, I mean, not that you don't learn something at a zoo, but I thought that was kind of an interesting point. Like, yeah, we can do that. We can go online. We can, you know, it's not like in the 1800s where they just like, they may have had some old books or something like that maybe had like a print of an animal or something like that where they had never seen these things before, you know?
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting because we've moved from like treating the animals like circus animals to like actually a lot of zoos I think have animals that were injured or that like can't go out into the wild. That's or the animal the mommy and daddy animals have baby animals and then they release the baby animals like out into the world to do things like that happens I think. But at the same time, like after that progression, we also have the progression from using them as a tool to teach people to not really needing it very much, which is kind of interesting.
We look at something like what SeaWorld went through. Where
SeaWorld was never educational.
I know,
SeaWorld,
but there's like a similar thing going on there. Like they're capturing these animals, and like it was only after people started to like put a ruckus about it that some of them weren't doing as well, and that they had to actually like send some of them back into the ocean and stuff like that.
Yeah, but the zoos, I don't think the zoos generally have animals perform. Like they might do the thing where like, oh, watch while we feed the penguin, but you know that's not.
It's not entirely comparable. I'm just saying, like, there's similarities, I think.
Yeah. And I think zoos have just carried over. Like, we had zoos, now we still have zoos, and, like, when people are growing up, you go to the zoo as a kid, and some people like them, so they just kind of keeps rolling over.
More humane than other ones, too. Like, they're ones that have terrible practices, but I know at least...
I feel like we've been moving away from that, though. Like, just in general.
Yeah.
Just because I do feel like a lot of the people who work in zoos it's zoology, it's biology. They're people who studied this because they wanted to work with the animals.
Yeah, they're bachelor and masters.
Yeah, like they want to help these animals. So I feel like when unless you have like upper management who's screwing you, like I feel like the people working with the animals really do want to help.
Right.
And make sure that they're well. But
do you think aliens will ever take us and put them in our...
I mean, we did it to each other, so...
Yeah, exactly.
And if anything, we're worthless and we just deserve it. So.
Oh, wow. Jesse just...
If I'm not getting reparations, then they're getting reparations in a weird way. Or
I mean,
I get
in
reparations
general,
for our suffering.
In general, I feel like you have to do is like just pick a person up out of their house and drop them in a different house. And as long as there's Wi-Fi, they probably won't notice.
Wow. That is the truest thing. But they don't know the password, though.
And it's like in some alien language, so like I can't even type it even if I knew it.
Just fetal position. That would be an alien social experiment. 2 humans.
It's an Anunnaki.
One has the Wi-Fi password, the other one does not.
And just give them like a bowl of Doritos or something like that.
They're just crying into their Doritos. Like it'll be in alien textbooks for years to come.
Well, you know, like with our phones and stuff, it is kind of like they've trapped us in these little zoos, right? Like,
oh my god.
Why does the Owen Wilson voice keep coming back?
Wow,
It's so...
you know, like alien zoos, man. Like,
it's always my topic. It's always my topic that gets super punny on his end.
How does
it's
this
like, do I
happen?
invoke his punniness? He puts on like 34 years and he becomes dead instantaneously. Another thing that strikes me about the idea of zoos is when people go there, right? Mm-hmm. They take numerous photos of them, like the animals with flashes and like and bang on the glass or just like put their hands on the glass. And like to me, that would be like polarizing to my soul. And it would debilitate my social abilities to cope.
That just reminded me of the petting zoo at Cedar Point. Like, I don't know if you've seen petting zoos and amusement parks, but Oh my god, it's just like they have alpacas and goats and chickens and like goats. They have tons of goats and bunnies. But it's like right under this roller coaster, and you can like walk in near the goats and just seeing these goats so apathetic to the roller coaster going by, and just people coming up, like little kids with their grubby little hands, like and touching these goats. It makes me so sad. Like those animals look so sad to me, and their tiny little cage. Petting zoos are the real evil here.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I was at Cedar Point yesterday, and I just wanted to take the goats home.
Cedar Point is a big amusement park in northern Ohio.
People know that nationally, at least.
I don't know if I would have known that.
People in Florida, when I moved there, the first thing they asked me is, have you been to Cedar Point?
Really? Wow, I didn't realize that it
Weird.
was that famous. And time.
We have the world's fastest and largest roller coasters.
And the world's longest lines.
Yes.
And it's hot and humid because it's on the lake. And the wind doesn't blow there somehow, even though it's on the lake. It's really...
It is weird.
It's so bizarre.
There's no wind, and then it rains, and it gets humid.
And then
Like,
there are
what?
bugs everywhere. I'm really excited for the mayflies. It's going to be awesome.
This episode is brought to you by Cedar Point. It sucks.
No, it's not, because you're going to cut that out because we are sponsored by Audible. So
Actually, yes, that's actually what I want to talk about right now. The listeners of the Can You Not podcast can get a free 30-day trial through Audible, through offering a free audiobook download through their service. So if we could just go around and recommend a book for our listeners to try out, I'm going to recommend Citizen and American Lyric by Claudia Rankine, or I think it's Rankine. That I just read. It's about like racial aggressions, pretty much like in the 21st century. Small ones, big ones. I really enjoyed it. Amber, what's your recommendation?
If you haven't read American Gods by Neil Gaiman, just go do it. It's a really interesting book told in modern times, and it's basically the gods need worship to be alive, and the worship of the gods is dying out. And I'm talking about like as far back as like ancient Egyptian, and it's just kind of them coping and wandering around, and there's a big war, and it's pretty cool, and you should read it. It's great. Neil Gaiman is phenomenal at writing.
I would like to reference The Measure of a Man, a spiritual autobiography by Sidney Poitier. He broke history and won an Oscar as a lead role as a black man. And then the drought happened for years, of course,
right,
as we all know. But it just goes through his details of being an Afro-Caribbean man and coming to Florida, South Florida, and then going to New York, and then all his travels and all his times and tales and stuff, and what made him who he is, and the culture shock between coming from the islands to racist Southern America.
Nice.
And just... Well, not nice, but...
I mean, like, the book sounds good. Like, I might check it out.
The book is really good, and it's really inspiring, and it was given to me by my grandmother. One of the best gifts I've ever gotten, so pick it up on Audible.
Yeah, so if you would like to listen to any of those books for free, get a free book, you can go to audibletrial.com/canyouNot with no question mark. And it's a really great service. You'll get it. They'll let us know that it came from us. And again, that's audibletrial.com/canyouNot for your free audiobook today.
These birds are tweeting in the back.
Yeah, I know. I want to
Faster than my timeline.
I want to close the window, but like it's like so hot in here. I don't know.
You can tell it's summer. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so my topic is a lot less concrete. And it's just kind of something that I think about sometimes, because it's not really based on a particular thing that happened in the news, which is unusual for me. So here we go. So a thing that I find interesting is the nature of mistakes and how we react when people make them. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I mess something up, like I get a fact wrong, or I have an opinion that they disagree with, or that is wrong, I guess, people are often called out or ridiculed or put down because they're thought of as unintelligent or ignorant or what have you. And I feel like that calling out thing, like this putting down of people, can do two things, and it does. And that's either make the person not have the conversations anymore, or it makes the person impassioned because they don't want to be told that they're wrong, and it makes them talk louder. So it either shuts them up or it makes them talk louder. So they either won't talk because they're afraid of being wrong, or they start feeling like they need to put up this wall of belief around themselves where what they're saying is right, and they know that it's right, and they won't let other people talk them out of it. I feel like both of these things can be really, really harmful, because if you're afraid to be wrong out loud, you won't be corrected, and you'll continue to have, undiscussed opinions. And if you become over impassioned, how will you be able to hear legitimate counter arguments for the things that you are talking about, that you have opinions about? So I think it's interesting. It happens on the internet a lot, I know, and it also happens like in real life. And I think one of the interesting parts of this is that, like, when I think of the word mistake, I think of like making a math problem, so then you don't raise your hand. But I feel like this also happens with a lot of social justice things. So like somebody has an opinion about transgender people or something, and they become so used to defending themselves against people because they're under constant attack for like defending this one thing, that as soon as somebody has a legitimate counter argument for one of their points, they won't listen to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like some people get so used to defending themselves that there's this constant guard up that they even stop having discussions that could even improve like their thought process or their opinion. And that's not really a question, but do you think that we could handle mistakes better? Like, I know psychologically people they don't want to like admit that they're wrong, but the way that we handle these things that we're impassioned about, I'm interested in your opinion about that, or just like your experiences with something similar.
I think one of the most important things I ever had to learn was to pinpoint when I was wrong and be able to change my mind about something. Because you're right, that is really hard to do. And it's really hard to be aware of it, I think, even more so. And so, and it is interesting that's not very often taught. Our politicians are almost taught to do the exact opposite. You're never supposed to apologize. It doesn't matter if you said something, or, if they do, they just flip they flip their opinion and they don't say anything about apologizing, like, I was wrong. Very rarely, anyway. I think the hard thing too is, especially if it's like, say someone does kind of like what you were hinting at, like say they have a really bigoted viewpoint or something like that. It's a tricky thing to approach because no one wants to hear like, dude, that was a really racist thing to say or something like that. No one ever wants to think that they're racist or that they're, no matter how much racist they may possibly be. So I think the best thing to go about is not to say like, hey, you were racist. Just be like, more call out like, hey, that was a really questionable thing, or like call out the action or the words rather than saying like, you are this, because I think that gives people more of the option to change. If you're attacking their thought process, then at least they're thinking about it and they don't feel like, oh, well, this person already called me this thing, I'm not going to listen to them, and shut down, I guess.
The fine line between accountability and the art of argumentation is in play. So when we do this call-out thing and we find fault in someone's fault or mistake, we have to decide, is there room for reformation or is there room for pointing a finger of accountability? And this is what you're getting into. From my point of view, someone that says something racist to me, they better have accountability because of the position I'm in society. Taking myself out of that and putting myself into a different perspective or context, then I can think of argumentation or refutation. So it comes into this play of how do we weigh these things. I really have developed a better way of responding to people that don't like me for who I am based off of listening to them. So for me, going into that and seeking fault in what they say or the mistakes that they have made in their conversational skills, it has helped me, but it is so hard not to just be upset with their faults. And if there is logic behind what they're saying, let's explore that logic more. I think the problem is we don't have enough logic in these conversations. So there are a bunch of potholes and there's a bunch of fallacies within this.
Do you think if more people on both sides talked more often, it sounds a little silly, so if everyone just talked about it, but like, I think there's truth to that. Do you think if more people just had a conversation about what they think, do you think they would come to more agreeable terms?
I don't think anybody has conversations. I think people have yelling matches on the internet.
Exactly.
And another thing that I found is that this even, like people who are bigoted put up the walls, but I feel like people who are actually on the right side put up these walls too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the people who are mad at the Powerpuff Girls thing.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to do it right, but they're not doing it right.
It's
and they
a
have
whimsical fallacy.
Yeah, and it's like I can feel you wanting to do the right thing, but at the same time you have these like you have all this armor on and you're trying to it's not a conversation anymore. And I feel like even just attacking why you said that, I don't think we should attack. I think I should look at, and it's hard to not attack, especially when somebody says something awful.
You've had all kind of sexist things.
Oh yeah, that, yes. Well, some, not a ton, but just I feel like exploring why people think what they do, because if you can start going into it's like sources, but I'm approaching this logically, which that's not how a lot of people communicate with each other. But like exploring sources and why you think that way, instead of saying you're wrong, you should say, why did you say that? Mm-hmm. I think that can help. But the problem is that won't work on everybody. You know, like that won't help sometimes. So
it's really easy to one-dimensionalize people who disagree with us. It's so easy to think, well, they think this because of this, and not actually explore why they think that. Mm-hmm. And so like you said, even if you like are quote unquote right, which, you know, it's always a vague term, like unless it comes to something that's actually factual about something, like
the world being flat.
Yeah. Sorry guys. I just think that
Amber has some haters.
people are multitudes of things. People are not just one stereotype. And I think we've talked a little bit about before, like when we were talking about like Trump supporters and stuff like that. It's easy to paint these people. We say, why are these people behind these concepts that are so hurtful to other people? And oftentimes it's not because they want to hurt other people, and they may just want something that maybe isn't what Trump is actually going to do or implement or something like that. I don't know.
Well, the other thing too is I think this is all coming to a consensus of our own being gets in the way of the art of this conversation, right? So like for these Trump supporters, it's about self-preservation. Yeah. It's about the society in which they want.
And I feel like a lot of Trump supporters, like when you talk to Trump support, well, I mean, discounting rallies, like when you see the footage from the rallies, but if like with the one-on-one conversations with people, a lot of times what I hear is he has some weird views, but at least he's going to do something about it. So I feel like from their point of view, there just hasn't been enough done. And this is the one who's left who actually looks like he's going to do something. Yeah. Like, and I'm not saying like, I don't know, it's just like looking actually into these individual people. Not all of them are horrible people, like at their core or anything. Yeah. It's just like this person that they're behind is really, really terrible. Right. And I feel like everything is nuanced like that. Right. Like people with horrible viewpoints have a reason usually for that horrible viewpoint. It might not be a good reason, but exploring that could be beneficial for the conversation.
They see someone who appears to not put up with the stuff. The narrative they've always been told is that politicians are these like timid people who are always like careful about their words and stuff like that. So when they see someone who's like just saying whatever, I can see why that would be really appealing to some people. It's like, wow, this guy is not, I mean, obviously I think there's detrimental aspects to just saying whatever you think, but they don't feel like he's lying to them. Yeah, they don't think he's lying. They don't think what he's saying is, they just go, wow, that guy, he's just speaking his mind, and I want to be like that, is what they think.
Just on a bigger level, because we always circle around Trump when we discuss things.
We do.
But like, it is really interesting because like I haven't like resorted back, however you want to phrase it, back to like my own experience and how to answer this question. But like, once again, I'm talking about my own self-preservation.
Right.
So it's really hard to take the I out of our context.
Right, and that's kind of what I meant by you get so impassioned in things. Like, because I even try and take a step back, like, especially as far as, like, women's issues or other things that I'm not necessarily a part of, but that are really important, like, you know, like the Black Lives Matter issues and, like, the LGBTQ issues. Like, these are all things that I really feel strongly about, but at the same time, I feel like it's important to realize that other people have reasons that they believe things, and even if it is skewed and hateful, I feel like understanding where they're coming from is how you open up the dialogue, so that way you can achieve understanding with people and maybe change some minds.
Okay. All right, nice. Solid conversation today, guys.
Woo!
If you want to hear more solid conversation, you can check out Can You Not at Can You Not podcast on iTunes and give us a rating too. That really helps us out. Anything you can do to give us a couple stars and give us like a little comment. And you know what? If you actually give us like a typed comment with the rating, we'll read it on the podcast. So please do that. And you can also find us on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/CYN podcast, and now on YouTube too. So if you search CYN podcast, you should find some of our stuff. What did we learn today?
I think you go first.
Oh, okay. I learned that I'm going to wait to see if Ghostbusters is good or not, the reboot. But I can see people's frustrations. I think there is some sexism involved, but I don't think that's everybody. And I think it's simplistic, like what we were just talking about, to paint everyone who's against the new Ghostbusters as being inherently sexist.
What I learned today is I like turtles.
In the zoo.
And not the zoo, but I can see why it's a positive, but I can also see why it's a negative.
Yeah.
And only time will tell if it's going to eventually not be an institution that we use.
Dialogue is hard, and psychology needs to fix this.
Blame it on psychology.
This is baby science that needs to get its shit together. You have some catching up to do.
Coming from physics and engineering, the feud will always be there. It will always be there. At least you didn't aim for sociology, man. God.
Oh, if you want to leave us a comment, actually probably the best place to do is we now have an email that you can send us to.
Or Twitter.
Yeah, or Twitter.
Twitter's way easier than email, but...
But if you do, either way, the email is canyounotpodcast@gmail.com. So send us something to talk about. We love hearing these comments. It was great having some stuff to respond to.
Draw me as a gecko. Like, send me fan art. Like, I want to see this.
Do we want to give a Twitter shout? We haven't given our Twitter handles in a while.
Okay, so it's at Black Celtic, BLVCKCELTIC. Yeah.
If you want to read about me complaining about taking summer Diffie Q and C programming, you can follow me at AmbaJ. It's AMBAHJAY.
You can follow me on Pogie_Joe, POGIE_Joe. And people who won't follow me on Twitter, can you not? That seems like a double negative, but...
Joe, can you not?
Hand on your hip, Joe, can you not?
Bye!